Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the support on the recent content. We are back with you guys with a live recap of the Olympics so far, and the Olympic debut for Team USA 2024. I think there's a lot to be said about this game. I think we're going to go through what we liked, what we didn't like, and all that stuff. So please, before we do get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OPT Podcast for more content and updates. We've been zooming through our sub goals, so our next one is 500. So please do like and subscribe. It'll help us get there very quickly.
Yeah, just, as a quick note, I think the last time we did a live stream, I want to say we were at, we were below 100, and now we're at 113 last time I checked. So
yes, sir.
Thanks, everybody, for, continuing to support us. But, yeah, we just got done with game one of Team USA's quest for gold, and they beat Serbia 110-84. Started off as a pretty close game early on, right? Obviously, we watched it. It was, Serbia had, a little bit of a lead early on, right? Team USA got to a slow start, as we've kind of seen through most of these games, right? Despite the fact that, Kevin Durant, he came back. That was, this was his first game since his calf injury, because he hasn't played at all, other than I guess maybe in practices. But he came in out of the gates firing, right? He was 10 for 10 in the first half, right? 21 points, didn't miss a shot. But it was still kind of a competitive game in the first half, right? You even had a few other guys like LeBron, he chipped in, and was pretty efficient as well. But then the second half, right, was kind of where the game was blown wide open, right? Where eventually the defense started kind of locking in, and they started getting stops. They started getting out and running. Because the offense was not an issue for most of the game, right? That wasn't really the issue in the first half, especially, right? I mean, again, you had multiple guys that missed only one shot, if not, zero in the first half. But, again, as we've talked about before, where this team is going to be able to kind of win out is when they get stops on the defensive end. Zay Williams, this team is underwhelming. I mean, again, they ended up winning by almost 30 points, but it was a close competitive game for the first half, right? The final score doesn't really show what the game actually was, right? Because they really pulled away, in the fourth. But for most of the game, it was kind of a game where, which was what we talked about for a while, where we, in our last podcast before this game, we thought that this would be kind of a competitive back and forth game, but that Team USA would win, right? They ended up winning, I think, by a bigger margin than we expected. But again, like I said, the final score doesn't really show what kind of happened in this game, because it was not like a 30-40 point drubbing for most of the game. Usually Serbia was kind of hanging around, between anywhere from 8 to 12 points, something like that.
Yeah. And
yeah, exactly.
There's a lot going on in this game, though. And I know we're probably going to get into it a little bit later, but what did you think of the rotations? Maybe some of the guys that didn't play. Yeah. I thought it was kind of interesting Tatum didn't play, considering KD came back, though.
Right, and we talked about this, on our last regular podcast, where we said once the actual games start, you're not going to see, 12 guys actually getting minutes, right? It's going to be, like a regular rotation. And like you said, you had two guys who didn't play at all, even in garbage time. Or like you mentioned, Durant, he came off the bench, right? So they went with the starting lineup that they've been playing with, right? Where it's Drew, Steph, Booker, LeBron, Embiid. And then, Tatum and Halliburton got DNPs, basically, right? So you had Derek White get minutes, I guess instead of Halliburton, right? Then you had Durant that kind of took away Tatum's minutes, right? And then the other guys that come off the bench that normally play anyways, right? Like AD, Bam, and Edwards, right? They got the lion's share of the minutes. So, it seems like that they've settled into their 9-man rotation. I'm curious to see if it really changes at all, depending on a game-to-game basis, right? Because we know whenever Durant is able to, they're going to plug him into the starting 5. And I guess Booker probably comes out because, a lot of what Booker gives you, that's what Durant is going to give you, just, with more size. But, yeah, I mean, I thought it was intriguing because I didn't really expect, I figured Halliburton probably might stop getting minutes, just because it feels like it may be kind of hard to put him out there, with Edwards, who's going to have the ball and look to score. Right, even though Halliburton can shoot and kind of play off the ball, it just feels like a weird mix. Tatum, I didn't really expect to not get minutes at all. Yeah. That was the one that kind of surprised me, again, considering he was on the team that won the title and he was the best player on that team, even though Jaylen Brown won Finals MVP. But, yeah, that's kind of the tough part, is that you have a lot of talent, but you have to find a way to make it all fit together. And that's where, this team is going to have to probably kind of figure some things out. But, again, as long as you win, it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, I understand that, yeah, it wasn't the dominant win that you would like to see, even though they won by almost 30. But, they still got the job done. But there's still some kinks to probably, get ironed out, right? Like, the
Yeah.
turnovers, right?
Hmm.
Which some of that just comes from still kind of getting used to having to play together, right? And the defense is going to have to get solved. And some of that you may just kind of have to make some sacrifices, right? Because like with Embiid in the starting five, doesn't really look like he's in great shape. You're just going to have to kind of switch some things up on the defensive end there. And then the second unit will kind of patch some of that up for you, right? Like Bam and AD can lock down the middle. And then, you got other guys like Edwards that can get it done too.
Yeah. So, takeaway wise, what were your what were the things that you liked, and then kind of talk about the things that you didn't like? Because I think there's a lot to be said for both ends.
Yeah. I mean, offensively, in this game, the main thing was, if you look at the 3-point shooting, that was kind of part of why they won the game on the offensive end, right? 18 of 32 from three. Because they had, in some of those other games, they were really cold from three, which was kind of allowing the other teams to hang around, where they just couldn't take advantage of those opportunities, but they finally broke through, right? Like Steph, 3 of 7 from three, right? Edwards, 2 of 3, right? Durant was 2 of, that's the free throw line. Durant, 5 of 5 from three, right? Steph, 3 of 7 from three. Edwards, 2 of 3 from three. You had some other guys like Embiid was 0 for 3, but, the 3-point shooting by and large came, through when you needed it. The Devin Booker, 4 or 5 from three, right? So that was kind of the things that you liked, right? There were stretches where, when they were making crisp, smart passes, and you can kind of see, like, even though LeBron had, I think, 6 turnovers, right? He had 9 assists, right? You could kind of see the stretches where he's basically running the show as the point forward, whatever you want to call it, right? And that kind of allows Steph to play off the ball, right? Kind of as a very dangerous 3-point shooter, right? Because we know that's what he does. Tatum, 0 minutes, according to Miami Heat Network. Yeah, we talked about that. That was interesting. Didn't really expect that, but um, yeah, I don't know if that puts a hole in your your discussion you had on the Heat live stream. I'm joking, it doesn't. But either way,
If we're being honest, I don't think Jimmy gets minutes on this team either. Yeah, I'm just being real, just because of the wing depth. I don't know, but it is funny as hell.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of what I like, I like the non-Embiid bigs. Again, Durant coming back, right, which we talked about, very easy to plug and play, to kind of when you need some shots to go your way, right, he can obviously do that. I guess if you wanted to say things that I didn't like I said, didn't really like that Tatum didn't play at all because I just didn't really expect it. Again, you can mention the wing depth, but then I guess you also kind of have to say he's not going to be taking away minutes from Durant or LeBron, right, because those are the guys that, came here and wanted to play for the team. So then, what happens after that, right? Does that mean like maybe, if Booker moves to the bench, maybe he just sits and then Tatum gets the minutes? I don't know. Maybe is that what we're looking at? I'm not sure. But, then obviously I already mentioned the turnovers. Wasn't a big fan of that, right? Because especially in the first half, it was really sloppy in the first half, right? Where it was just like them just kind of gifting possessions to Serbia. And then, the defense, with some of the starters out there, again, gets kind of mucked up. So, like I said, there are certain things that will probably have to be, phased out. But again, we know the starting five probably isn't going to change other than Durant will slide in for, like I said, probably Devin Booker, right? So Embiid's going to be in there to stay. I know people keep complaining about it, but it's not going to change. So you just kind of have to work around it. So,
Tyrese,
again, there's still stuff to build off of. Go on.
Miami Heat Network said, Tyrese, what's up with him? I just don't think there's enough room in terms of like play style and fit for him to kind of be on the floor at the same time as these guys, in competitive situations. Like we saw a lot of him in the exhibition, but me personally, I'd rather have Derek White out there. Obviously Drew Holiday, just because they do a little bit more on the defensive end.
It's like what we talked about with Edwards, where if he's going to have the ball in his hands, it's kind of hard to have him and Halliburton out there. I know Halliburton can shoot, but most of his value comes from putting the ball in his hands and being able to run the show as the backup point guard. But you're probably not going to bench Halliburton for Edwards. So
yeah,
you're not going to bench Edwards for Halliburton. So
no,
excuse me.
Yeah, and it's like I liked what I saw from Katie. That was my number one takeaway. I think him looking as healthy as can be in peak peak KD. Like this guy
Yeah.
is awesome. 23
And
points,
he's
leading
not a guy
scorer.
that's normally rusty, when he comes back. He's normally pretty fresh anyways.
Exactly. Yeah, he was on fire. He only missed one shot. And I think his final shot was like in the fourth quarter or something like that. And like you said, the thing that I didn't like was probably Tatum not playing. That was odd to me because I feel like he could have contributed. But at the end of the day, they got the W and they won it in a dominating fashion. So it really doesn't matter. But that's kind of like nitpicking at this point.
Right.
I also like the sets that they run, in terms of Curry moving off the ball, Holiday being a factor on offense and defense as well, Book also being a spot up threat. I think like there's a lot of chemistry that they have going for them. It's just in the turnover department, I'd kind of like to be able to see that get ironed out. But in all honesty, I don't think that's going to happen just because they don't play with each other very often.
Exactly. Yeah. Because again, like the reality is that it's very difficult to just put a group of guys together and just have everything be completely seamless, in this short of a time span. But you just kind of hope that the talent can kind of outweigh some of that, where they're just going to be able to have stretches where when they do look like they're playing as as a team, as a unit, right? Then that's where they're going to be able to kind of just run teams out of the gym. Because that's kind of what happened in this game eventually, was that at a certain point, Serbia just kind of ran out of gas. And then that was it. Again, like, you look over at the Serbian, box score, right? And again, it's going to look a little bit different because the first half, right, the stats, looked fine because it wasn't that, big of a discrepancy in terms of the score. And then in the second half, got away from them, right? Like Jokic had 20 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 4 turnovers. Again, he did what he could, right? Again, considering the, discrepancy in the talent, even though,
Yeah.
again, there's some guys on the Serbian team that are good, right? They do have other NBA players. They have Bogdanovic, right, from Atlanta, right? He was 6 of 14. He had 14 points, right? So, not great there, but still 4 of 8 from 2, 2 of 6 from 3. And then Jovic, right? From the Heat, right? He had 5 points, 1 for 6. I think he just recently came back from an injury. I think Petrusev, right? He was on Philly last year. I don't think he's on the team this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Maybe he still is, but he's probably not going to play. And then Micic, right, for Charlotte, who was on Oklahoma City. So they have some NBA players, but Team USA, this is a better team.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think we kind of called it, predicted it, in terms of, we thought Jokic was going to have a good stat line, but we also knew that Serbia was not going to win this game. I don't think, there was anybody that really picked Serbia to win this game, just considering all the talent that you have. But from the big man perspective, the front court perspective from the United States, I have not been too impressed, if you want me to be honest. Throughout the exhibition games, 100%. But through this one game, I was not happy. I think, AD, he looked awesome. But in terms of Bam, I wasn't too happy in terms of, his counting stats. And obviously Embiid, definitely not happy with that because it seems like Embiid is a bit of a stopper when it comes to being, on this team and being in the starting lineup because, he's such a post-dominant player. The offense has to be slowed down and you kind of have to feed him in the post, and that's just not going to win you games, I think.
Right.
So I don't really know what the solution is for that. So what have your thoughts been like on, the front court guys?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Embiid is that if he's going to be out there, he has to be involved in the offense, right? Because like with, Bam and AD, right, they can kind of do other things. Like I know Bam, he'll have the ball and, ISO and play one-on-one. But, he's a really good passer, in and out of the post, right? And then obviously in AD, he can crash the boards. He can play in the pick and roll, as can Bam. So I think that's the thing with Embiid is that if he's out there, he kind of has to be a featured part of the offense, right? Because otherwise, what is he going to really be able to do, out there, right? Like obviously he can set screens and stuff like that, right? But he's more of a, like you said, he's more of a run the offense through him type player. Keith Wells, the old heads are back. Yeah, they're back, and they played pretty well, honestly.
Yeah. Shout out to Braun too. Guy was balling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing. And again, ideally, you kind of look at it as, Embiid kind of gives you that offensive punch, and then off the bench is where AD and Bam give you the defensive punch. And again, that wasn't really the case too much in the first half, where it didn't really matter who was out there. Serbia was kind of just, able to hang around and go back and forth. And then again, it prevailed in the second half. But, I think, and it's kind of interesting, like with this Serbian team is, they do have a number of, big guys, right? Because there's going to be some other teams that they play where there's not as many, great options in the front court, right? Like when they play South Sudan, that's a smaller team, So that's a team where, again, Embiid in the starting five should have a better performance. And then off the bench, even if he doesn't play well, then Bam and AD should be able to eat against those second units, which are also small. So it's probably just going to be from a game-to-game basis. But, what you didn't get, from the bigs, kind of like Keith Wells was saying, right? You got from the other guys, right? Because, again, you got an offensive punch from Durant, right? You got an offensive punch from LeBron. You got an offensive punch, from Edwards, and Drew Holiday chipped in on the offensive end as well, right? So, this was just more of an offensive game, right? Because there's going to be some games where, you're not going to be able to get as many stops on defense, and you're probably going to have to be able to have like a, good offensive performance. Again, like you can't win every game like that, right? Like you're not going to shoot 60% from three every game, making 23s in a game. So the defense is going to have to get better, if they want to be able to win the gold, right? And so that's where you kind of hope, once they get the rotation settled, once, a little bit more chemistry gets built up, that's where I think, you would hope that it starts to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and
but I agree with you that the front court wasn't as impressive as you would have liked for it to be.
Yeah, and it was interesting too. Seemed like every time Embiid touched the ball, I mean, the boos were kind of echoing throughout the entire stadium, obviously, because Embiid had the choice. Yeah, Embiid had the choice between Team USA, Cameroon, or France or something like that, and he chose Team USA. But, I think with this
team, that's why he's going to start and play.
Exactly. And the thing with this team, though, the reason why it's so special is I think, the depth at the end of the day. That's their safety net. Like, yeah, they could probably have a horrible offensive game or a horrible defensive game, but as long as they get 1 to 2 guys to kind of just turn on that switch, I think, they'll be in good shape. So, and a dominating win, at the end of the day, like you said, the final score is what it is. But if you watch the game, they struggled a little bit in the first half.
Yeah. Just the fact that you have a team where, the best player on a finals team didn't even play at all, is pretty, it's pretty good. That's a good team.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. So, I guess if you want to kind of, look around, because you had some other games, that occurred today as well, right? Because obviously Team USA, they will play South Sudan next, right? I believe that's on Wednesday, right? In South Sudan, they played Puerto Rico, right? And they ended up getting a win over Puerto Rico 90-79, right? So, again, if you don't remember South Sudan, that was the team that, very nearly upset Team USA, right? You have some NBA players, right, like Wenyen Gabriel, right, former Laker legend, right, JT Thor, Charlotte Hornets, and NBA 2K legend, right? You had Carlik Jones, that's the guard, right? That's the guy that had the triple-double, for South Sudan. I think he's a more recent addition in the last year or so. And some others, right? I think Maluak, right, who's about to go to Duke, right? So, we'll see if they're able to kind of have a repeat, of what they were able to do against Team USA last time. I don't know if it'll be, a 1-point win. I feel like, Team USA, I think, will have a better performance. We'll see if South Sudan's shooting reverts a little bit more. But I think next time around, I think that Team USA will have a better performance, right? Again, they may not blow them out of the gates and, win by 20 in the first quarter, but I feel like, there's the potential to see them get better and better every game. It's rough because ideally, if you're going to have more of a dominating performance, you want to start the first quarter off better, right? Where it's like, you got to start these games off better, right? Because again, Team USA won by almost 30, but they started the first quarter down, 10-2 or something like that. Again, the first 5 minutes or 3 minutes isn't going to dictate how the rest of the game is going to go necessarily, but, you would like to get off to better start so that way you don't have to bank on Durant going, 10 for 10 and a half.
Yeah,
just to be up
falling back on that.
15 points.
Yeah, and they'll have that safety net, like I just said. They'll always have the depth safety net, but you never really want it to get to that point because it doesn't reflect very well, I think, on the team as a unit and obviously the coaching staff as well. But looking at South Sudan, do you think they're who's your sleeper to kind of say Team USA does lose? What team do you think it is most likely that they do lose to? Sorry to put you on the spot though.
If they play them, I would probably think maybe the French team might be, able to give them a scare. Because with Canada, they do have the talent, but they are, kind of small in the front court. So I could see a scenario where, even if the Canadian guards, play, say SGA plays really well, I could see the Team USA front court, but it could be the French team, right? Because that's the team that's got Gobert, and they got Wemby, and others on that team as well. So that could be the team that kind of gives them a scare because you just don't really know what Wemby's going to look like, on this stage against Team USA because he had, a great first game, against Brazil, right? And we know that, he had a really good rookie season last year, right? One of the best rookie seasons we've seen, in quite some time. And there could be a world where, he goes against Team USA and he looks like the best front court player out there. And, he kind of, not single-handedly necessarily, right? But, he could just be a mismatch, right? Because, again, he's 7'4", right? Obviously not the biggest, strongest guy, but, still clearly very skilled, moves very well. And, it might be a tough matchup for some of those other front court guys. Right?
Yeah.
Because, other than Embiid, you don't really have any other super big, super physical, centers to throw at Wemby, right? Like AD strong, right? For sure, but he is 6'11" or whatever, which is not small, but you know what I mean. And then Bam, is also a great defender, right? He's 6'10". So that would be my concern. Probably might be Team France, but maybe that might be reaching.
No, I agree. I think they're probably like the favorites to upset Team USA. I feel like Canada is probably a close second just because of the talent that they do have on the roster. Like you were talking about, though, size discrepancy is probably a little bit scary. What do we think of Germany?
Yeah, according to Keith Wells, Team USA too much speed, too athletic for the rest of the world. I mean,
facts.
I mean that I think that's the case that we're making too. Like we're not saying Team USA is going to lose at all. We're just, you're just posing the question of if there's a team that could pull off the upset, who could it be? And it could be France, maybe Canada, but go back to what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, what do we think of Germany? I feel like they're a sleeper pick as well, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, they gave, Team USA a scare in that last exhibition game, right? Because they had a number of guys, that can, kind of shoot, that can kind of do a number of other things. Dennis Schroeder, I guess, kind of leads the charge, which can both be, a good thing and it can be a bad thing, right? As we saw in that exhibition game, right? Because he had, some stretches where, he was kind of leading the team, against Team USA. And then he kind of basically shot them out of the game in the fourth quarter. But, that's kind of just, that's the experience that you're going to have, with that team.
Yeah.
When he's, basically the captain of the squad. So they could give them a scare, right? Because, they do have some guys that can spread the floor along with, some bigs that can kind of, run up and down like Daniel Tice. But, I don't know. Like, that one's a wild card to me.
Yeah, I agree, because I feel like one guy to watch out for in the Olympics is Franz Wagner. So I'm just trying to highlight, the rest of the world. But at the end of the day, Team USA is dominant. They've got it. They've got the team. This is the team.
Right. And that's another guy where, again, he just got his new contract, right? He's coming off of that, first postseason run against the Cavs, and he may, come out there with something to prove. So. And then looking around, right, yesterday you had a few, Olympic games as well. We already mentioned, a couple of them, right? Well, I guess those were the ones from today, but the ones from yesterday, you had Australia, right? They beat Spain, right? If you know the Australia team, right, that's the team that's got guys like Josh Giddey, Dyson Daniels, Patty Mills, Josh Green, Dellavedova still around, right? Jock Landale, right? Former Suns legend, I guess. They beat the Spanish team, right? There's not really, I think, at this point, well, I guess you have Aldama, right, who plays for Spain, and then I think you have some former NBA guys, like Rudy Fernandez, the Hernan Gomez brothers, I guess Garuba, right, he's on the team, and then looking around, right, Germany, they blew out Japan. I think Japan, that's the team that has Rui Hachimura on it, right? He actually had some good exhibition games, didn't shoot well in this game, but again, the talent discrepancy is a lot different because, as you mentioned, for Germany, right, you got Schroeder, you got the Wagner brothers, Daniel Tice, whereas with Japan, what do they really, have, on that team besides Rui, in terms of NBA level
Watanabe.
Talent, right? Yeah,
That's about
Watanabe,
it, though.
but he's, but now he's, I think, out of the league, so.
But I mean, it's tough. It's slim pickings, around the globe outside of, the U.S. and some other countries.
Right. Then you have France, right? As we already mentioned, they beat Brazil, right? And they were led by, Victor Wembanyama, right? He had 19 points, 9 rebounds, 3 blocks, 4 steals, 7 of 13 from the field. And keep in mind, they also have Rudy Gobert. They also, I think Koulibaly is on that team, right? I don't think he plays a ton, but, he's on the team. Batum's on the team. Frank Ntilikina, right? Evan Fournier. I think former Celtic Gorshan Yabusele is on that team as well. They beat Brazil, right? Who I think has a couple NBA guys, right? Guy Santos for the Warriors. And then a couple of former NBA guys, I think like Cristiano Felicio, Bruno Caboclo, right? The Brazilian Kevin Durant, Mr. 2 years away from being 2 years away.
Yep.
And then I think Raul Neto's on there as well.
Yep.
And then
Marcel, what is the guy? Huertas?
Marcelo Huertas,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's the former former Lakers legend. And then the other team that played, was Canada. They beat Grenada, right? So I think, obviously the Canadian team, we know what that team is, right? You got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, R.J. Barrett, Olynyk, Dylan Brooks, Nemhard. So that's a really good team as well, right? And then, they beat the Grenadian team, right?
Yeah.
So, So, again, like I said, Team USA, I think, is the favorite for sure. But, again, there are teams that do have some NBA talent, so you have to take them seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
Or, excuse me, it's not Grenada. My bad. I completely misread that.
Greece.
It's Greek.
Greece. Yeah. Giannis had 34 in that game. So, he's up there.
I was getting ready to say, I was like, that's not Grenada. I was like, that's not the. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Giannis is on the team because I think they beat Slovenia, right? They beat Luka's team in order to get in there. So. Yeah, exactly. So, so what do you think of the Greece team? I guess, do you think that they could really, I obviously, you have Giannis, but not much else at this point, right? I guess you have some other guys that, again, used to be in the NBA, but not for long, right? I think Papa Giannis, Georgios Papa Giannis, I think he was in the NBA at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. But I think he's the only guy, right? I think Nick Kalathis or whatever, I think he was on Memphis a while back, but not for very long. So really it's Giannis, Papa Giannis, and then I think Papa Nicolau, who played for Houston.
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't know why we're laughing, but
those are pretty funny names, you have to admit it. But in terms
Giannis
of
and Papa Giannis on the same team.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of Greece though, I feel like you kind of have to talk about them and hold them in a high regard as long as Giannis is on the team, because you look at what they were able to do against Canada. The box score doesn't really scream blowout, but you look at the point differentials, like 34 points from Giannis, and that's about it. But
17 from Papa Nicolau, I guess.
Yeah, but to hold your own against Canada and you pretty much only have Giannis is pretty cool. So not to say that they're gonna spoil anybody's day, but I feel like you kind of just have to watch out for Giannis because the guy is a beast.
Yeah, exactly. So again, just so everybody knows and understands, right? Each of these teams or whatever, they're put in different groups. So Team USA is in Group C, right? So we have to clear the Group C teams before we move out of Group C and then play the other groups, right? So then eventually, the team that's the last team standing is the team that wins, right? So then they get the gold.
Yes, sir.
Which is what we should get, but again,
that's what everybody was saying on our content. We're making great points. We're vouching for Team USA. We're trying to prop them up as we should. And then everybody's like, yeah, they should dominate. Yeah, if they don't, it's disappointing. And everybody's absolutely correct. Gold or bust.
Yeah, gold or bust. Yeah, if they don't win gold, that would be a massive disappointment.
Yeah, man. Look at who's on the team.
And then that's an understatement. And that's yeah, exactly. And that's an understatement as well. Right?
Oh yeah.
Again, sure. I would say it would be worse than 2004.
100%.
Because we laid it out on the podcast, who was on Team USA in 2004 versus who's on the team now. There's no excuse really and I understand that there's more NBA players on the international stage, so you are playing better teams as well, right? Which also I think has something to do with why maybe some people look at it as underwhelming, right? Because say if you go back 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't as much NBA talent on those international teams.
Sure.
So, Team USA is up here when they have their best players versus the rest of them is down here. But now it's a little bit closer, even though Team USA is still better, I think.
Yeah, and it's we made the comparisons along with a lot of other NBA media outlets and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they've been talking about, Dream Team versus Team USA. And I think, from an accolades perspective, it probably is the Dream Team that's better. But from a talent perspective, I just kind of have to give the edge to this team. They haven't really, I think, stepped up to the plate too much, especially when they start the games out, because they start out very cold and they don't look very competitive, like in terms of, or they don't look as dominating as I think, they should be on paper. But
Right.
when it comes down to it,
Yeah.
the talent level is there. Like, we all know it. It's insane to see, the combinations of these guys on the floor together at the same time. And it's awesome that it's a mix between the young and the new. That's or the young and the old, excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess, in terms of other stuff around the league, I mean, again, obviously it's been a while, since we've done a live stream. I think the last time we did it, was free agency. So, I guess just to kind of, throw a bone, I guess, at people in the live stream, just anybody, out there, right? Any of our, wonderful viewers out there, what do you guys think, might have been like your favorite signing of the offseason? Or I guess, to you, I guess we'll ask you, kind of what was your favorite signing of the offseason?
That's a good question. If you want me to be honest, this might be a hot take, but I'll probably go with KCP to Orlando. I think, that one pushes Orlando into a different level of competitiveness. And I know it's, it's not an all-star or anything like that, but I think it's a key role player that they were kind of missing. But he also fits their identity perfectly and could be like the catalyst to add a certain level of maturity, seriousness, to, a young team that just made their playoff debut with this young core. And then obviously they're looking to build on it, and then they can kind of figure out, who else is going to be a part of this core and key rotation, because you have guys like Anthony Black, Jet Howard. Do they even play? And it's like, I get, being a lottery pick and, upwards lottery pick, does kind of warrant, I guess, some sort of leeway to the point where, yeah, you need to be playing. But at the same time, I think, considering how competitive the NBA is right now, and the limited roster spots that each team does have, if you're not really contributing, then you probably aren't going to be playing, So I think, adding a key contributor is something that Orlando was missing, especially at that 2 guard spot, because it's clearly an upgrade.
Yeah. So I guess you're not as big of a fan of, say, like the Paul George signing, I guess. Mainly, is it because of the age? Is it just because of the player?
Both.
Because of the money?
Okay. Not money wise, because I feel like he deserves that contract.
Yeah.
It's just more so like, it doesn't make me feel like Philly's a serious contender, Okay. Like the big three of Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid doesn't necessarily make me comfortable with them, potentially being the favorites in the East. Like, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. I feel like KCP, KCP, I feel like elevates, that team a little bit more than maybe a Paul George, because what I would say is, I think the key for Philly to be a contender is Tyrese Maxey has to take another leap. And that might be a hot take. I don't know. But for me personally, and it's not that I don't like the Paul George move. It's just more so like, it doesn't feel as impactful, And hats off to Philly for pulling that move off, because they did what they needed to do.
Right, because that was something that we didn't really actually think that anybody was going to go there. So we were definitely wrong about that one. I like the KCP signing too. I think the Hartenstein one is also kind of a big one, mainly because of the fact that I know it's a lot of money, but it's front loaded, right? And I think the last year's non-guaranteed. And again, it's a center that they literally didn't have, right? You look at that postseason series they had, against the Mavs, and obviously, when you lose in 6, it's not like one thing that made you lose, right? But part of it was, in addition to the Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. threes, right? It was also that they literally just couldn't clear the boards, right? Like basically Dallas's bigs badly outplayed OKC's bigs, right? Or I guess they really only had one in Chet Holmgren, right? But now you have a guy, Hartenstein, where regardless of whether or not he starts or comes off the bench, because I don't know what their starting 5 is going to be. I don't know if he's in there. He's getting paid a lot of money, so I would think so. But regardless, that's a guy that regardless of if he starts or, is in the second unit, he'll be able to, add another element of size, and he can kind of fit in there, right? He can pass, he can play make. So I think that's a really good signing. What about least favorite signing?
Least favorite.
Or like one that, or, maybe one that is kind of a head scratcher to you.
You know, I don't really think there is one.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of like, the upper tier of guys, the notable ones, like
Okay.
I wouldn't really say there's a head scratcher. Maybe the DeRozan one for the Kings. Like,
Okay.
it doesn't make me feel like they're gonna be contenders. But and I mean, we already talked about it. Like, I feel like with
Right.
DeRozan, he's a direct upgrade over Harrison Barnes. But is that direct upgrade gonna get you, to a deep playoff run with that team? Probably not. I guess who else moved? I guess Clay. He moved. I don't think that's a
Mhm.
super head scratcher though. Like, I'm fine with that move.
Yeah. Hmm.
Chris Paul.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I guess like maybe that's how you could look at it, right? From the perspective of like they're not necessarily bad, but maybe like like when DeRozan was a free agent, I didn't expect him to go to Sacramento at all,
Right.
right? Like I don't look at it as it's clearly it's a talent upgrade, for sure, and there's reasons to be optimistic about why he can help make the team better. It was definitely surprising though, for sure.
Yeah, I think it
Um,
came out of left field.
yeah, right. Yeah. I guess that's definitely true. It was definitely kind of a weird one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was
We
yours?
talked about um I mean, I feel like the DeRozan one is more so shocking than I think bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, some of them like are kind of a minimum contracts, but I don't know. The Westbrook to Denver one, like I understand it, but I'm not really like a huge fan of that one. Like I understand it, like I'm not going to sit here and say it's the worst, most horrific free agency signing ever cuz it's a minimum contract, but again, I feel like that's just kind of a healing the mental what's up fellas.
What's going on, man?
What's going on? Welcome to the stream.
Yes,
KD was unstoppable. LOL. Yeah, that's what we talked
yeah, he's
about
a
on
dog.
at the beginning. Yeah, exactly. And we talked about where he would be able to help out this team. And again, pretty obvious ways considering his offensive capabilities. And then he's very easy to plug and play. Right? We knew even though we know historically when he comes back from injury, he's usually not really rusty.
Mm-hmm.
Again, do we expect him to shoot 90% from the field every game? No. But you would expect him to have like some level of baseline of an offensive output, that should be able to kind of stabilize the team offensively, and then hopefully that allows them to set up their defense, better, so that way they're not just turning the ball over or taking horrific shots, and then the other team gets a free transition basket. But yeah, the Westbrook one I feel like is just I don't know. I'm not super high on that one, but I understand it. I understand it from a regular season perspective. I'm just not very optimistic about it from a postseason perspective. But like you said, from the main free agency ones, right, in terms of the signings that actually matter, the ones where it's not minimum contracts, there's not like any of them where I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's a horrible signing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I
Like, because
actually
even the
like the
West,
Russ one though. I
yeah,
really do.
because even with the Westbrook one, it's like, so what? It's a minimum contract signing, right? It's not a franchise changing one like any of the other ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like looking at that and not liking that is a lot different than like, if somebody said I don't like the Paul George one, or if somebody said I don't like, the DeRozan one, or
Yeah.
Hartenstein or whatever, because those are more consequential signings because of who those players are. It's Dave from the Heat Zone podcast, by the way. What's up?
Oh, what's up, bro? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on Tatum not playing? Since I know, all you guys are pretty low on him. So I'm curious, what you think about, Jason Tatum
yeah.
getting a 0 minute, pretty
Yeah.
much a DNPing on, the best, team that you could possibly be on right now.
Yeah, exactly. But best PG-13, worst Lakers 0. Well, I mean, they didn't make a signing, so we can't really say that they had like a best or worst signing. The Russ one isn't bad at all. He gets to be the guy off the bench, and this is his best chance to get a ring.
That's why I love it. I like the Russ one.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, I mean, I just feel like there's a reason why he's bounced around from team to team. But I understand it. Like I said, I think he will help them win regular season games. He will give them, he'll give the guys in the starting five a break. He'll give them, an ability to kind of I don't want to say take games off, but you know what I mean. It's just my main concern, and we'll get into it when we get into like the Nuggets offseason stuff, is that then you're adding another guy that teams aren't going to guard from the perimeter. And I think, you're going to compound that with Christian Brown. You're going to compound that with Aaron Gordon. You're going to compound that with Westbrook. Maybe Peyton Watson, we'll see. But I think what really is going to be the difference maker for them is the younger guys. If they take a leap and they get better, then that's going to be the main impactful thing for them.
Yeah.
And then he said, I'm a Tatum fan. I wanted to see him play, but they didn't need him today either. Yeah, like they didn't really need him in order to win.
No,
Like,
KD was there.
Yeah, like you know what I mean. Like when we're watching it, you're probably thinking, "Why isn't Tatum playing?"
Hmm.
But you're not. I don't know if you're necessarily thinking like, you know what they need in order to push this lead from a 10-point lead to a 20-point lead. Jason Tatum, because they were
Right.
still up for the vast majority of the game, right? I know they had the horrible start in the first quarter, but after that they were able to kind of normalize and pull away.
It was still like a noticeable absence though. And I think it
Yeah,
not that it like spoke volumes or anything, but I think it's just gonna cause a lot more
yeah,
Tatum hate potentially. But you know, like you said, they didn't really need him. They really didn't, because when you have KD going off like that, LeBron doing his thing as well, and everybody really
yeah,
having a solid game one way or another,
right,
you don't need a Halliburton or a Jason Tatum. If
yeah,
you're up by
because that's
30, come on now.
right, because that's the question is who if he's gonna play, whose minutes is he gonna take? Like you could make the case maybe I guess for Booker, but I mean Booker's at the I guess he's playing the quote unquote starting small forward, but that's the only guy where like maybe you could make the case,
Yeah.
right? But with Booker, I mean he played well. He can spot up and shoot without the ball and play without the ball in his hands. So and like he said, it's just one game. So again, like, and they still won. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like from a game to game basis, this is all going to change, right? Because maybe next game, against South Sudan, I know they won by a point, but that next game could be like a 30+ point blowout.
Yeah.
Again, again, from a game to game basis, you go back and look at that South Sudan game. Look at how well that team shot, for most of the game, South Sudan, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how they were able to build up that lead. I mean, and also Team USA shooting was absolutely terrible. Now, you could also flip it and say Team USA shot really well in this game. So what if the next game they shoot poorly? But, if both teams shoot poorly, then Team USA is going to win. He could take White's minutes too in spurts. I mean, again, all these guys can play different positions, right? So like Tatum can play, the 3, the 4, right? I guess for Boston at times they kind of played him sort of starting off guarding centers, right? So he can kind of play a number of different positions.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these guys are kind of interchangeable.
Yeah. They just had such a good performance, and everybody was pretty much doing their job. You don't need to put him in. What do you gain from that, really?
Right. Yeah. So I guess you want to mention the Jaylen Brown thing, or do you kind of want to just leave it at that?
I only saw the headline for it, so you can talk about it while I pull up, the full statement.
Yeah. Right. So I guess Jaylen Brown online, right? He on X, he basically kind of he put out a big statement, right? He said
Whoa.
Grant Hill calling me a conspiracy theorist is disappointing. I've been a VP since I was 21 years old. I have a great understanding. So if you haven't, been following what's going on, obviously, we've talked about it, right? Where Jaylen Brown was left off of Team USA. Obviously, there's, a lot of people that have had issues with that, considering, you're talking about finals MVP for a championship team. Again, if you, I guess, read kind of what Grant Hill was saying, I don't necessarily feel like what he said, was that horrible. Like from the perspective of, I think he was kind of addressing the concern, what people had been talking about. Like he was kind of addressing the conspiracy theories that people were coming up with. I don't think he was calling Jaylen Brown, a conspiracy theorist. So, I mean, again, I understand Jaylen Brown being upset, right? Because, I'm sure he probably feels like I should be up there, right? I should be there with, all these guys. I mean, again, Jason Tatum isn't even playing, right? So, if he's not playing, again, like I can understand Jaylen Brown being like, well, why can't I play? Like Jaylen Brown not wrong for feeling how he feels. And I think that's kind of the main thing. Like it's understandable that he would be not happy about not playing for Team USA because he's very good, right? Again, how many American players, right, are better than Jaylen Brown, right? Like he, should be one of those guys, especially like, again, like say Kawhi Leonard, he steps out. I'm sure he probably thinks I'm better than Derek White. Again, the public airing out doesn't feel like a good thing. Again, is it something that's going to derail their season? I mean, I don't really think so, but I understand, people being concerned because, again, like, you do have multiple guys on your team on there, and it's not you, right? They have, 3 guys on Team USA that are Celtics, and none of them are Jaylen Brown, which I feel like is kind of surprising, but I don't know. It just, like, it feels like kind of a senseless back and forth, but I understand his frustrations, right? Because, again, like, you can. We talked about like Derek White being a better fit, but you also have to say Jaylen Brown is the more talented player and you feel like there's a way to make that fit work, even though maybe it might be a clunkier fit. So I can understand him being upset, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't know. I mean, I feel like this isn't the first time. I'm sure we've had other guys on Team USA before that could make the case they should be on it, but they're not on it. But, I understand it though.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. There's some decisions that I guess would need to be made because I feel like that you could
Right.
argue that Jaylen Brown should be on there over Tyrese Halliburton, and I feel like there's other guys
Right.
on the roster or who aren't on the roster that could be on the roster, but in theory you're not building an all-star game. So I do understand what Grant Hill is talking about in terms of you kind of just need not necessarily a glue guy, but a guy who's very versatile,
Yeah.
on both ends of the floor in Derek White, because I guess, Derek White can kind of bring you, something that you'd probably be missing in terms of Kawhi's defense.
Yeah.
That would be like one of the players that could probably replicate that the closest, not nearly
Yeah.
as well, but probably, closest. But, Jaylen Brown is so talented. He's so good. And we saw it in the finals. We saw it throughout the playoffs, really. And that's why he won finals MVP. He's that guy.
Yeah.
But, obviously there's other factors outside of basketball that I think, Jaylen Brown is the guy who's alluding to all this stuff, with Nike being at the helm of, Team USA and stuff like that, and them not having a good partnership at all. So, that's where I think the conspiracy theorist stuff comes from Grant Hill. But, it's just drama, unnecessary drama, if you ask me.
And the other thing I think you also have to factor in is that, again, not everybody's going to play, so you kind of have to have guys on the roster that are going to be okay with sometimes just not getting minutes,
Right.
like that, because again, like I mean, Tyrese Halliburton didn't get minutes at all. Jason Tatum didn't get minutes at all. I'm sure they want to play, but are they going to raise a stink about not getting any minutes? Like, maybe not. And I mean,
Right.
like, they could easily be mad if they didn't get minutes. And there's going to be other guys that I'm sure, like once Durant's in the starting five and then they kind of figure out what the actual rotation of minutes are, there's going to be other guys, right, where they're either going to play very few minutes or not play at all. And that's kind of the other key here. Because like you said, you're not building an all-star game because everybody plays in the all-star game. They don't necessarily play equal minutes, but they all get minutes. But for Team USA, your goal is to win the gold. And that's like, a regular NBA roster where there's going to be guys on the roster that will not play at all, right? There'll be guys that will play a lot in the regular season, and then in the postseason, they play 0 minutes, right? Unless it's garbage time. And you have to have guys on that roster that are okay with that. So
Yeah, and it's been
again,
hinted at that also, you can't take anything away from Jaylen Brown's IQ and, who he is as an individual, because I think everybody knows this guy is a very smart human being. So I think he has a great sense and a great grasp of reality and what's going on. So calling him a conspiracy theorist is, I think, a little bit out of left field, if you ask me.
Yeah. But yeah, just kind of an interesting situation, and I'm very curious to see how that continues to unfold, right? Because again, the concern that you would have if you're Boston is just you don't want all of this drama bleeding into your season, especially a year coming off of a title, right? Because
Yeah.
you had, Golden State, right? They had, after they won the title, a very drama-filled season, and that really took the wind out of their sails, in their quest to try to defend the title. I mean, they ended up not necessarily being good enough, but you also can't say that drama wasn't a factor, in terms of impacting what happened in that locker room.
Oh, for
and
sure.
what happened with those players. So, just kind of something to think about.
Yeah, for sure. That was the downfall of the Warriors dynasty,
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, again, anything else really to cover, or, are we pretty much, or have we pretty much tackled everything?
I mean, we covered everything Olympics wise. We talked a little bit about free agency. We have some, other moves that we'll probably discuss, later on tonight's episode, or the episode that'll come out tomorrow. So we will be recording that. So stay tuned for that. We appreciate every single one of you guys who showed up in the chat. We appreciate you, Zay Williams. We appreciate you, Miami Heat Network. We appreciate you, Keith Wells. We definitely appreciate you too, Dave. So once again, shout out to everybody who did come through. We will be doing, more of these live streams as the Olympics continue, mainly talking about Team USA, and then obviously wrapping in the other countries as well. So once again, we appreciate you guys for all coming through. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you are new. And we will see you guys on the next live stream and the new episode coming out tomorrow.